With adult hindsight, what was a complete WTF moment from your childhood that you didn't understand at the time? Grew up poor in Russia and at the time fresh fruit was hard to come by. On the rare occasion my parents procured some oranges, they would give them all to me because they didn't like them. Of course they did. They just wanted me to have the few spoils they could afford. When I was younger, my brother and I used to use those AOL kids and teen chat rooms all the time. We used to get online girlfriends and would talk each other on there. My brother had met this girl that became his girlfriend that apparently like 40 miles north. One day my brother said his girlfriend wanted to meet him but wanted to meet him at the store about a half mile from our house we would ride our bikes to. He asked my parents if he could go see his girlfriend the day of, and my parents freaked out and refused to let us even ride our bikes that day in fear he would just ride up anyway. Looking back, my brother was probably going to get taken by some creep. That's a horrifying thought. I used to use web TV chat rooms and I met quite a few people on there. I wonder how many pedos I talked to pretending to be girls. This guy finger banging this lady on top of a huge turtle sculpture at this place called Lake Osceola in New York. I was probably 6 years old. He was laughing at us watching and drinking a beer with one hand. And she was staring at me and the other kid I randomly was aging with at the time. I just remember thinking it was super unusual and had no idea what I was watching. Mom. EFT douche bottle with spray nozzle and shower. 6-year-old me was filling it up with water and spraying all over myself, mouth, and ugh, the horror when I think about it. I always thought my mom had a bad cough. I would hear her every day coughing in her room. All those late night trips to Denny's make a lot more sense as a pothead adult. Now I think I remember a roach in the ashtray that I noticed didn't look like one of my parents' cigarettes. When I was about 6, my mom would try to use code words to her friends when I was around, so that way I wouldn't repeat it. She would talk about how one of her friends had the heebie-jeebies and gave a girl the heebie-jeebies and now she's really thin and really sick in the hospital. I had no idea what she was talking about. The only time I heard that word from anywhere else was from Scooby-Doo, and that meant the creeps. So, I thought that the guy gave the girl the creeps and then she got really sick. Didn't make sense to me. That proves your mom's way worked. My stepmother, I'm assuming to check my knowledge, asked me if I knew where babies came from. I might have been 6 or 7. I would point to her belly and tell her all I know is that I came from there, and she would chuckle and tell me that I didn't come from her belly. I guess at the time I assumed she was one of those parents that claimed storks bring babies but never gave it much thought until I was a teen. To be clear, she raised me from age 3 to 13 before I knew she wasn't my biological mother. My friend and I encountered an old guy in a van who had 2 girls our age in the back. We were about 12. One was half naked. I thought Hall and Oates Maneater was about Miss Pac-Man. OHH, here she comes. Watch out boy, she'll chew you up. I thought it was about a little cannibal when I was a kid. When we were in school, maybe about 7-8 years old, we had been learning about some kind of conflict between Sikhs and Christians in religious class. So, at lunchtime, we formulated a game called Sikhs vs Christians where basically we just pretended to fight each other with imaginary swords and stuff. It was all just in fun, but when we were asked about it by a teacher in the play area we were told to stop for reasons we didn't understand. I get it now. It was a touchy subject. That a group of my neighbors ran a successful prostitution and possible ring basically right across the street my entire life. I didn't really get the big picture until I was about 10, but it was literally going on all day, all night until I was at least 21. A daily source of fun was to sit on the front porch and see what idiots actually went in and out of the place on a daily basis. Bonus points if the John's wife crashed the party. When I was about 3 or 4 I remember walking through my house at night calling for my mom and her not showing up. The next thing I remember is my dad taking me to pick up a lady and her daughter who eventually became my stepmom and stepsister. After a few years I would be taken back and forth between my parents every few years but grew to resent my mom for initially abandoning me. She died when I was 23 and I flew back home to bury her. My sisters and I share different fathers and they didn't like mine. I never really understood that since he cared for me so much and was a nice person to everyone. His work even made him have an amazing funeral and some rich family donated a grave at a nice cemetery. When I asked them why they disliked him so much and why mom abandoned me when I was so young, they finally told me that he would beat her. It all eventually dawned on me that my dad was a wife beater. My stepmother had become battered and angry over the years and I never put it all together. I think on some subconscious level I knew all this because I am so scared to hurt people. I'm even scared to be in a relationship because I fear I'll become like him. When I was very young, maybe 5, I was at CVS with my mother. I struck up a conversation with a man while I wandered around, and he asked if my father was home. I responded that no, he works at night. My mom was there right as the conversation happened and ran us out of there. I didn't really get it for a while. I liked strangers. When I was in elementary school, we had a parents' night where all the students had to read a poem for everyone. Much to my parents' dismay and repeated attempts to dissuade me, I insisted on performing my piece on learning the trumpet. Do you know how to blow? Wasn't until many years later why my folks were so mortified that night. Please supply poem. OP. When I was little, my mom would ask me daily if anyone ever touched me in a way that I didn't like or if they touched me in my private areas. I just found out this year, I am 22, that she was molested by her friend's dad when she was 8. She passed away when I was 12, but one of her friends showed me a letter she had written him telling him a bunch of stuff like that. He felt I needed to know, and honestly I am glad I know now, because everything with how my mom's side of the family interacts with each other makes a whole lot more sense now. 2. Growing up it was completely normal for me to visit Aunt K and M. I never questioned why I had 2 aunts on one side of the family living together. It took me until high school to fully grasp that they were lesbians. I had the opposite thing happen to me. Growing up, my dad had 2 female relatives who I didn't quite know how they were related to my dad, but I knew they lived together. I was probably like 10 when I found out they were sisters, not lesbians. My sister independently thought the same thing. I always asked why my uncle never had a girlfriend. My mom always told me he did. He lived in San Francisco and I lived in NJ, so we never went over his house or anything to prove it. I even remember asking him and he said because nobody loves me, in a joking manner. Didn't realize he was gay until years later. Another one was when I was little. I'm guessing around the age of 7. I was trying to be like my dad and read the newspaper like an adult. Found a random article with the word rape and kept asking my mom what does rapt mean, which is how I pronounced it. She told me I have no idea. When I was like 12 or so my mom took me to a friend's house and left me with a guy I didn't know and we watched Jackass. Never had seen it before and laughed my butt off. Mom still hadn't come to get me. Later on the police came in a giant raid to save me and later on in life, not even a year ago, realized she almost sold me for M. The people she was with dropped her on the side of the road in an attempt to kidnap me. I look back at that and literally wanna cry. My whole childhood was kinda like this. But we're close now and she's been clean for a few months now. She still relapses here and there and gets s-faced drunk all the time, but at least she's trying. Asked my father if bestiality was cruelty to animals. Was in some book I was reading when I was about 9. He gave a vague yes answer and it took a lot of years before I understood why. My buddy showed me pictures he had uploaded onto his PSP of the special Boy Scout camping trips he took with his dad. Now realize that a bunch of grown men and children burning crosses is not the Boy Scouts. Not the turn I thought this story would take. Mom's crappy ex-boyfriend had neighborhood kids in his bed with him sometimes. I remember wondering why they slept in my mom's bed where her and her boyfriend slept. Also, this guy's obsession with wiping my butt after numero dos. Lots of WTF moments in there. I thought cold food would turn hot like hot food that turns cold, and it would be a never-ending circle of food going through temperature changes. The most innocent one in the entire thread. When I was around 10 there was this kid at my school a few grades younger, probably about 6, who liked to hang out with me and my friends. He was hyperactive and kind of amusing, but he had this weird fixation on sex. If we were playing a game and one of us fell into the dirt he'd come over and start humping us. Once I was standing against a wall and he just walked over and started grinding on me. This was constant and it got to the point where we just kind of distanced ourselves from him. We never really thought anything of it, just that this little serial humper and sex obsessed child was slightly annoying. It didn't occur to me later that a kid as young as 6 should even know what sex was. We never taught it to him. He was like that when we met him. This wasn't normal childhood experimentation. This kid knew more about sex than most of us did. I felt sick when I finally looked back on him and realized that something freaked up must have been going on for a 6-year-old kid to be acting like that. Like really freaked up. I genuinely didn't understand why I blushed every time the beautiful young substitute French teacher spoke to me. 3 years later, I realized I like women. Somehow missed that I'd had a massive crush on this lady. I thought the UB40 song Make You Sweat was about being a personal trainer. I don't even know why I knew personal trainers were a thing at the time. I thought Madonna's Material Girl was about a girl who really liked fabric. I used to dance around to it waving around blankets and stuff. When my mom and sister weren't home, me and my dad would play a version of hide and seek, and he would roam the house with a knife in his hand talking about how when he found me he was going to ram it up into my eye socket lobotomize me. I loved it. We all need to hear more stories from your childhood. This is my stepbrother. Even though he looks just like me and my dad, my parents adopted him. I cringe to this day at how much that amazed me. Little did I know, parents just didn't want to tell me dad had a kid in a previous relationship. I had issues around age 5 with poor butt hygiene. I guess I didn't wipe effectively enough. My mom took me to the doctor and got some tips for how to get me to clean better on my own. My mother then explained the new routine. I needed to spread my cheeks wide and rinse in the shower every day. This went on for a few days and things were clearing up for me. Fast forward to the weekend when my father returns home from a business trip. We spent some father-son bonding time at the gym playing tennis and afterwards used the communal showers. I was so eager to show my father how well I had been progressing. So I leaned against the wall with my face toward the wall and allowed the shower to flow over my head, land down my back and into my spread open butt cheeks. My father was so proud of the progress I had made, and that my hygiene was improving that he wanted me to demonstrate this new cleanliness routine to about 3 other guys he knew at the gym who happened to also be near the shower area. I was so glad my father and the gym buddies were proud of my progress but thought nothing of it until the memory came back to me nearly 20 years later. TLD, I gave a private show to gym creeps. He just probably thought it was funny. Apparently I buried this one deep. For the past 30 something years, when a friend asked about the large scar on the back of my head, I told him about this game I was playing with my mom when I was about 5, where she put a pillow over my head and see if I could get out. I had to push myself out from under the pillow so hard that I hit the corner of the nightstand and that's how I got this nasty scar. And then I saw my friend's face get pale, then red. And I realized how lucky I am to be living and breathing after my own mother tried to kill me when I was a kid. P.S. She hasn't been in my life since I was about 10, and just now trying to reconnect on FB. I blocked her, and now comments on my YouTube channel trying to act like she just found her long lost son. Even though I lived for 15 plus years in the same place she saw me last time when I was 10. My 4th grade teacher had a karaoke machine in the classroom and all day long we would take turns singing as we pleased. It's perhaps a large part of my love of singing music to this day. In hindsight I realize the karaoke machine was only there to entertain us while he did absolutely nothing all day long and still collected a paycheck. He also traded Pokemon cards with us. God bless that man. When I was around 10 years old, my friend and I were near a neighborhood park, building a dirt jump for us to go off of with our bikes. This teenage guy older than us, 18-19, walks up to us and is rambling on about who knows what. My fiend and I, the innocent idiot kids we are, decide it would be funny to hide this guy's bag in the bushes. My friend distracts him and I throw the bag in the bushes. About a minute later, the guy starts freaking out. I mean like going insane. Screaming curse words we had never heard at age 9-10. He began frantically and angrily asking where the frick his bag went. I pointed at my friend, not wanting to take the blame. This guy grabs the shovel we were using to build the jump, and starts swinging it as hard as he can at my friend, missing him by just a couple inches. We booked it the frick out of there on our bikes and never went back there again. This guy was a rimhead. Looking back now, I know he was completely tweaked on M. The bag I hid was his drug supply. When, at 12, my 30-something-year-old online friend wanted to meet me in person. Freaking creep. Good thing I said no. Same thing happened to me. Told him where I lived and everything. Went out to meet him one day but he never showed. Why my aunt was melting sugar on a spoon with a lighter and then taking a shot of it into her body. It also smelled horrible. A group of teenage young adult guys came up to my 5-year self and my 3-year sister in the grass area outside my flat and grabbed us. I remember they had some weapons. Nunchucks is one that sticks out in my head. But a 15-year girl we knew grabbed my sister and took her home safety while I was taken into one of the guys' bedrooms and the door was locked. I was given a pop-up book. I remember it was vampires, and the guy fiddled about on his computer, trying to engage me and get me to play with him, but I refused and ignored him cause I was really enjoying this book. He went to the bathroom and I managed to climb out of his bedroom window and get back to my flat. I'd missed my lunch curfew and I got grounded and was only allowed 2 Jaffa cakes when my gran came around later. We ended up moving from that area not too long after. Looking back on it as an adult, it really freaks me out what almost happened did happen and I've just suppressed it very well. How I escaped always struck me as very idealistic. Not sure how I would have actually got out through the window at that age. When I asked my mum about it recently, she got quiet and mentioned my dad got very angry when he found out and sorted some things out. I got one. I'm a chick so this is double weird. I, 9-yo, was on summer vacation in another state visiting family. I got to go to some kid's birthday party. They had a large, but not deep, blow-up pool. I ended up in the corner and I was thrusting my pelvis into the corner. The pressure and water current felt good. I turned around and said this was fun. Some of the older kids gawked and laughed at me while pointing and saying things I've repressed. I got out and waited in the driveway till my sisters were done and we could go home. I didn't know what I was doing but I knew I was being ridiculed. Humped the pool and got made fun of. Holy crap, I only just remembered this ever happened and I am so bloody horrified. When I was about 8 years old and my younger brother was 6. We used to hop in the shower together when we got home from the beach to save one of us having to wait for our shower while being wet, cold and sandy. I'm not sure how it came about, but one time my brother and I figured we'd have a fun little competition of who can stand there with their finger as deep in their butt as it can go for the longest. I couldn't tell you why we thought this was a fun, perfectly normal thing to do together. That just reminded me of me and my brother taking baths together when little. We discovered that we could shoot air up our bums with an empty hamster water bottle. We would then proceed to go rip-roaring through the house in our towels. Mom was not amused. Ha 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 ha. Here we go. When I was young, can't quite remember my age, I got my first erection. The first thing I did was run straight to my mum and go, "Look mummy, it's gone all weird." Looking back, the shock in her face is painfully cringy. I was so proud of it though. She just told me to lie on my bed and calm down, probably scarred at seeing her little boy sexually aroused for the first time. TLDR. I showed my mum my first erection very proudly, having no idea what it meant. Trust me, as the mother of a young boy, she had seen a lot of them by this stage. Even at nappy change time, small baby boys get erections. It's not fun being a mum sometimes. When I was 4 and 5, my dad used to feed me dried spinach when I didn't want to eat dinner. He told me it would help aid my digestion. In my 20s, I was at a party when someone pulled out a baggie of dried spinach and smoked it. Thanks dad, weed is delicious. I laughed and then realized you were only 5, so that's kinda fricked up. Still funny though. When I was 4, I once told my mom I found piece of Lego candy on the street and I only know it is candy because it is sweet. She then told me not to eat stuff I found on the ground and I was horrified. WTF, how did she know I ate it? It was a big mystery to me and I believed my mom could read my thoughts until 10. It suddenly popped in my head and I was mind blown how stupid I am. When I was little I tied my friend to a chain link fence with a couple jump ropes. We were playing some game and I was pretending to be a villain. I remember feeling a weird satisfaction from tying her up but thought nothing of it at the time. Later she tied me up instead and I remember loving it and wondering why. After that I had strange urges to do it again. Turns out I have a major bondage fetish. I still thought girls had cooties and yet getting tied up still triggered my fetish. Of course at the time I had absolutely zero idea that it was sexual. I just thought I was weird. Took me quite a few years after that to realize what it was. I think 7 maybe 8 and I had this friend whose mother suffered from lockjaw. She had this machine with wires and sticky pads that shocked you a little to relax the muscles. One day I busted into my friend's room to find her older brother hunched over that machine with wires coming out of his underwear. OMG sorry bye. TL. Cop tried to plant drugs in my grandparents' car because he's black. When I was about 5 my grandparents got pulled over by the cops. I had been in the backseat sleeping under a coat because I was tired and we were going home from a carnival. The cop had both of them get out of the car and handcuffed my grandfather, which I didn't get at the time. He's black. She's white, so getting stopped a lot was normal for us. While he's talking to them, his partner comes over to the car. Mind you, I'm still hiding under the coat because strange people. His partner leans into the backseat and pulls out a bag and shoves it under the coat and hits me in the face. I scream bloody murder, full on little kid being killed type of scream. The cop is so startled he backs out of the car so fast he falls, bag still in hand. Because I wouldn't calm down they eventually let us go and we got to go home. I remember sitting in the Huddle house overnight, and the waitress who was friends with my mom sometimes had to tell her we couldn't have any more crackers, because we would eat tons of them, because we weren't eating anything else sometimes for days, at home, at least. Free lunch, woot. It didn't seem like much then, but we were hardcore poor when I was a kid. Homeless for like 6 months and I didn't even realize it as a kid. As much beef as I may have with my mother, she did good there. No doubt about it. One year for Christmas, my parents got me a set of stilts made out of coffee cans and yarn. They were amazing, and I walked everywhere with them. Turns out, my parents were dead broke and that's all they could offer. I used to play around with a whip my parents owned. It was loud when it hit things and super fun for a 5-year-old. I realize now that it was a whip for BDSM and crap. This happened when I was 12. I got this good friend at school whom I used to play trading cards with. Had a lot of money out of the blue. He told me he's getting $50 of pocket money every week. Really big deal when we were just kids. He said his godfather was really nice and gave him $50 every week. I was like, hey, I want to meet him too. Seems like a nice guy. His godfather neighbor will take him out on cruise trips with his family. My friend was like, cool, let's meet him 6 PM at the playground so we can go to the nearby community center where he can use the toilet. That day, my mom told me not to go out cause it was dinner time. Days before he was telling me things like stroking of the dong and white stuff's coming out. Nobody had internet access that time and we were innocent AF. I was a bit disgusted when he said that. Many years after then I realized how fortunate I was that my mom saved me. Could have been a victim. Reading that was an adventure. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.